If you haven't noticed from the videos on this channel, I'm obviously from the Tampa Bay area. We have covered baseball, football, hockey, college football, and even the damn XFL. But of course, Florida is a much bigger state than just Tampa. And yeah, you got Miami and Jacksonville, which I've also touched on. But there's one other city that has thus far been overlooked, and it's about time we give it the love it deserves. Welcome to the Orlando Trilogy. Throughout pretty much my whole life, basketball has been the one sport I've never really given a shit about. Tampa was never home to an NBA team, well, unless you count that one year. And the region has primarily been dominated by the Bucks, Lightning, and Rays. For basketball enthusiasts, you're not going to find much in Tampa Bay. Instead, we have to hit the road and look about 2 hours to the east. After braving the treacherous road that is I-4, you'll find yourself in the distant lands of O-Town. The land where Disney and Universal reign supreme, bringing magic to millions of tourists every year. Magic. That's a good name for a team. In 1989, the Orlando Magic were born, and over the past 35 years, they've been trying their hardest to claw their way into NBA relevancy. They've had chance after chance to make a name for themselves, opportunities galore to emerge as one of the premier teams of the league, but every time they've found themselves cast aside for somebody else. If anything, the Magic can claim to always be the NBA's second best team. The greatest silver medalist in basketball history. Like the Rays, who've grown teams organically rather than relying on big-name signings, the Magic have spent most of their existence doing the same. The Rays have made it to the World Series twice in their 26-year history, falling short both times. Likewise, the Magic have made the NBA Finals twice in their history. Crazy stories of unlikely talent and memorable moments. Surely this team would be able to get lucky and come out on top, right? It's 1994, and the Magic suck. Their first 4 years saw them post terrible records, typical of expansion team woes. 18-64, 21-61, yeah, seems about right. They had some good names, like Nick Anderson, Reggie Theus, O.T. Smith, and Dennis Scott, but they were never able to put it all together, as the 91 and 92 season would be destroyed by injuries. They would finish with the worst record in the East, second worst in the NBA, but their luck would favor them as they would win the first overall pick in the lottery, which they used to select their first big-name player. Growing up, Shaq was just the guy in the General commercials, but in 1992, he was just beginning his illustrious basketball career as the number 1 pick on the Magic. He would immediately make an impact, as the team would post their first 500 record at 41-41 the following year, with Shaq easily winning Rookie of the Year. They even came close to making the playoffs, as they were tied with the Pacers for the final spot, but they missed out due to tiebreakers. And yet, in that year's draft, despite only having a 1.52% chance of getting the first pick, the Magic did just that. Damn, 2 number 1 picks in a row? Make sure you guys don't use all your luck too early. Their selection in Chris Webber would end up being traded, however, swapping him for Anferny Penny Hardaway. With him and Shaq, the Magic finally put together a respectable season, going 50-32 en route to the number 4 seed in the East, and home court in their first playoff appearance. However, it wasn't enough, as they would once again be playing second fiddle to the Indiana Pacers, who swept them in the first round. However, this young team was only just beginning to rise, as they would continue to bolster themselves with Horace Grant and Brian Shaw signing in the offseason. In '94, they would start the year by winning 22 of their first 27, and they would run away with the division, finishing at 57-25, and were suddenly looking like one of the premier teams to beat in just their 6th season. Shaq would continue to dominate, putting up 29.3 points per game and 11.4 rebounds per game, as he transformed into the superstar this young team definitely needed. Hardaway, in his second year, would also play well with 20.9 points per game, earning him a spot in the All-NBA first team. Alongside them, Grant, Anderson, and Scott would help contribute big numbers, and even guys like Donald Royal, Anthony Bowie, and Anthony Avent were able to provide solid depth. Shaq and Hardaway would both finish top 10 in MVP voting, with Shaq finishing just behind David Robinson of the Spurs, another second-place finish for this team. But nonetheless, the Orlando Magic would enter the playoffs as a dark horse to go deep, though still being a young team had them carrying little expectations. In the first round, they faced the Boston Celtics, and the Magic, having home court, would absolutely bully them 124-77 in Game 1. That year, the Magic were dominant in the Orlando arena, going 39-2 at home. But the Celtics would keep it close, as a tight 99-92 win had the series tied heading to Boston. In a close affair, the Magic would hold off Boston in a tight Game 3 win. Game 4 was even closer, as the Magic had just a 1-point lead with mere seconds left. However, Grant would make both free throws, and Orlando would hold on 95-92 to earn their first series win in franchise history. Hey, look at that. The Magic were actually able to hold their own instead of just folding in the playoffs again. But in the second round, they would come face to face with the biggest challenge their franchise has ever seen. The Chicago Bulls were the team of the 90s. They won 3 titles in a row from 91 to 93, thanks in large part to this little-known player. You know, Michael Jordan! Man, I'm not even an NBA fan, and even I know how great he was. However, in 93, he would retire to try his luck at playing baseball for some reason. Well, clearly that didn't last very long, because the very next year, he was back. Though something was different. Maybe it was the new number on his back, but he would put up his worst season thus far, as this would be the only season in his career he was not an All-Star, and the Bulls would only find themselves at the number 5 seed. Horace Grant, the big free agent signing in Orlando, was a key part in those championship runs in Chicago, and as the series began, the might of the old was quickly being challenged by the new. As Orlando won Game 1 at home, Nick Anderson, right after stealing the ball from under his hands, would say that Jordan just wasn't the same as he used to be. Number 45 doesn't explode like number 23 used to. Number 23, he could just blow by you. He took off like a space shuttle. Number 45, he revs up, but he really doesn't take off. Well, let's just say that Jordan wasn't too happy about that, as 3 days later for Game 2, he would walk out to the court wearing number 23, and he would put up 38 points as Chicago tied the series. In Game 3, it would go back and forth, with the Bulls holding a 1-point lead heading into the fourth, but the Magic would once again squeak out a win, thanks in large part to Grant, who was sorely missed in Chicago. He would play 44 minutes that night, a large factor in this series and the whole season. and as the Magic entered Game 4 up 2-1, they looked to put the Bulls on the brink. However, despite a Game 4 loss to even the series, Orlando would somehow keep pace, as they would come out huge on home court to win Game 5 and put the pressure on the Bulls. And facing elimination, Jordan would be held to just 24 points in Game 6. And down by 8 with mere minutes left, the Magic would score 14 straight points to pull off the upset, as they eliminated the Bulls in 6 games. To this day, it remains a black spot on Jordan's otherwise incredible record, as he and the Bulls would quickly try to forget the 94-95 season. It was simple. The Magic were the better team, and their run of destiny would continue as they faced the team that had beat them before, the Indiana Pacers. What followed was a tense contest, with the Magic winning the first 2 at home, and the Pacers following suit in Games 3 and 4. All 4 games were decided by 5 points or fewer, with Game 4 coming right down to the wire as Indiana would win at the buzzer. In Game 5, Shaq would come out with a vengeance as he put up 35 points and 13 rebounds, with Orlando up 83-72 entering the 4th. But the Pacers would storm back to even the game, as it came down to the wire as they got within 3. Orlando had a chance to put it away, but Shaw would miss 2 free throws. But luckily, Mark Jackson would miss a game-tying 3, and the Magic would hold on for the win. But Indy wouldn't go down quietly, as 2 days later they would jump out to a 65-40 lead at halftime, and wouldn't look back, as the series returned to Orlando for Game 7. Interestingly, all throughout the regular season and the playoffs, the home team won every game between the Magic and the Pacers, and with the deciding game being in the O-Arena, Magic fans were more than ready to cheer on their team. What resulted was a lopsided affair, as Shaq would net 25 points, Scott would have 19, and Hardaway 17, as the Magic kept a close lead heading into the half. But in the third, Orlando would pull away, outscoring Indiana 28-18, as the Pacers would go 5 for 17 on their shots. Ultimately, that would end up sealing the deal, as Orlando would cruise to a 105-81 win in front of an ecstatic crowd to reach the finals in just their 6th year. It's a night that many still look back as perhaps the greatest night in franchise history, as it was the pinnacle of a young team coming out of nowhere to take the league by storm and go on a miracle run. Many years later, as Penny Hardaway was being inducted into the Team Hall of Fame, he would remark on how that night was the loudest crowd he's ever heard for a basketball game. Jeff Turner would agree, as for the first time in their history, the Magic would find themselves on the cusp of immortality. Only one team stood in their way, and that was the Houston Rockets, fresh off winning the '94 title and looking to go back-to-back. It would be a contest of their star centers, Shaquille O'Neal versus Hakeem Olajuwon, as the series began in Orlando. Game 1 was an intense match, a back-and-forth battle as the clock rolled down. With mere seconds left, the Magic were holding on to a thin lead, and Anderson missing 4 free throws wasn't helping anything. With only 3 seconds left, Kenny Smith would hit the three-pointer to tie the game, sending it into overtime, and Olajuwon would tip it in to secure the win. If Anderson had made just one of those free throws, the Magic would have won this game, but alas, they would come up short. And after that, it seemed like this young team had finally deflated. Olajuwon would record a double-double in Game 2 as the Rockets won again. In Game 3, the Magic once again had a chance to come even, as Hardaway had the ball with 2 seconds left to tie it. But his shot would sail wide, and the Magic would go down 3-0. And while Orlando had the lead heading into halftime of Game 4, the Rockets would outscore them 66-50 in the second half, as Olajuwon would cement his dominance over Shaq, with this three-pointer going right over his head to seal the deal. The Magic had their time to shine, but at the end of the day, they had to make way for the big boys, and they would have to settle for silver. Well, not bad for your first deep run. Again, in a way, it's kinda like the Rays, where after an unremarkable first-round exit, they came out of nowhere to get all the way to the finals, only to lose in disappointing fashion. Like, come on, it wasn't even close. But no worries, they'll be back. And sure enough, the very next year they were even better, going 60-22, as Shaq and Penny continued to play at an elite level. They would easily dispatch the Pistons and the Hawks to reach the conference finals, where they would face the Bulls once again. And let's just say that Jordan and co. were very not happy about the previous year. In 95 and 96, they would put up 72 wins in the second best regular season in NBA history, and now they looked poised to return to championship glory. But Orlando was able to top them last year. Maybe they could pull it out again. Yeah, I'm not gonna bother. They got absolutely shit on, as the Bulls would demolish them in a 4-game sweep that saw them win by 38 points in Game 1, edge out a close one in Game 2, hold the Magic to just 67 points in Game 3, and, in the ultimate indignity, Jordan would put the nail in the coffin himself with 45 points in Game 4. Hey, that number seems a little familiar. Well, let's just say that you should never piss off Michael Jordan, as that 95 second round exit would be the last time he ever lost a playoff series, as following that, he and the Bulls would win 3 straight titles again. So yeah, thanks Orlando for unleashing Jordan's fury on the league. Just when they finally had some clout for themselves, they were quickly relegated to little brother status. And that was it. This incredible Magic core had 2 whole playoff runs before the fun was over, as Shaq would leave for LA in the offseason, kicking off an underwhelming 96 campaign, where they stumbled into the playoffs only to get slapped by their in-state brothers down south, despite Penny trying his absolute hardest to carry the team on his back. The next few years would be pretty much more of the same, as the team just seemed unable to reach the heights of 1995 without Shaq. 99 saw them return to the playoffs, with Penny being paired up with Darrell Armstrong and Dominique Wilkins, as they posted one of the best records in the conference. Maybe this time they can make a deep run. Yeah, never mind. They got upset again. Meanwhile, look who just won their first title. With that, it was the end of an era in Orlando, as Penny would be shipped off to Phoenix in exchange for practically nothing. And so the years came and went, with Orlando fans only left to wonder what could have been. The team who had a potential to become a great dynasty, with 2 of the greatest players in the league at the time, only came out with 1 banner to show for it. The early 2000s was a time of turmoil, as they flipped between fringe playoff contenders and basement dwellers. 3 straight first-round exits didn't make things better, with the last one being the worst, as they would blow a 3-1 series lead against the Pistons. Of course, that very year saw the first round expanded from 5 games to 7 games, so in any other year they would have already won. But of course, they got screwed over once again. After that, it was a free fall, as a 19-game losing streak in 2003-04 saw them post the worst record in the league. They had some great players during this time, like Tracy McGrady, Grant Hill, and Mike Miller, though of course their lack of success had them ready to pack their bags. And sure enough, McGrady was traded to Houston as part of the 2004 blow-up. But hey, they once again found themselves with the number 1 pick, and seeing how their last 2 selections panned out, maybe things will be on the up in Orlando, as they welcomed their new franchise icon, Dwight Howard. Despite finishing 36-46 in 2005, there was optimism in O-Town, as the Magic ended the season strong, as Howard and Hill both had great campaigns. Hell, they even brought back Brian Hill as coach, the same man who led Shaq and Penny back in '95. Their first-round selection, Fran Vasquez, would hopefully turn into another key piece, as the Magic looked to return to relevancy. Yeah, Hill would be injured for most of the season, Jameer Nelson would be out for over a month, and the team sputtered once again, as despite another late push, they had the exact same record as last year. But look, we brought back Penny! Oh, never mind. And yeah, remember Vasquez? Well, he never even played with the team, as he chose to stay in Spain instead. Man, now the Magic are getting one-upped by entirely different leagues? What kind of bullshit is this? Now, at least they were able to draft JJ Redick in the first round. They would continue to build, as 2007 was a bit better. I say a bit, as despite Howard still playing lights out, the rest of the team was either mid or on the IL, as they won 4 more games to improve to 40-42. But it was somehow good enough to make the playoffs for the first time since 2003? Can we really call this an accomplishment? I mean, they got crushed by the Pistons in 4 games. This hardly counts for anything. But the pieces were beginning to fall into place, as the next year they would post a solid record, going 52-30 to win the division. They would finally get out of the first round after beating the Raptors, but once again they got into trouble facing the Pistons. And yeah, they still can't get over the hump. But at least they won a game this time. And sure, we can point to how they played better with almost every game being close, or how they got screwed by the refs not knowing how much time was left, but it didn't really matter anyway. Simply put, the Pistons were the better team, and the Magic's silver medal collection continued to grow. I mean, if the Rays can get a ring for second place, then why can't the Magic? I mean, hey, what's one more, right? The 2008 Magic might not have had the same firepower as their predecessors 14 years prior, but they would make up for it with their depth. Howard, Redick, and Nelson would be complemented by Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu, and Rafer Alston up top, as well as Mikael Pietrus, Courtney Lee, Keith Bogans, and more. Despite Nelson having to go down with a shoulder injury, the other guys were able to pick up the slack. I mean, hell, one night in Sacramento, they had 9 different guys record a three-pointer, with 23 total, an NBA record. Howard would become the Defensive Player of the Year, as they finished 59-23, winning the division once again. This was a team that had something to prove. All these early exits were building to this moment. A chance to finish what they couldn't before, and take a ring to O-Town. In the first round, they faced the 76ers, where a close contest would come down to the wire. with the Magic ultimately coming up short as Andre Iguodala would nail the game winner. However, in Game 2, Lee would propel the team to even the series. Game 3 saw another contest clinched in the final seconds, once again from Philly. But luck would favor the Magic in Game 4, as Hedo Turkoglu would hit the game winner to tie the series at 2. In a decisive Game 5, Orlando would hold on to go up 3-2, although things would get hairy as Howard would be suspended due to elbowing. And yet, despite missing their young superstar, their depth carried them again, as Lewis would put up 29 to end the series in convincing fashion. In the second round, they faced the Celtics, where they would come out huge in Game 1, almost turning it into a laugher before they had to fend off a last-minute comeback for the win. Game 2 did turn into a blowout for the other team, as Boston would crush them 112-94. However, the Magic would follow suit with a 117-96 final to go up 2-1. They almost hit the jugular in Game 4, but Glenn Davis's buzzer beater kept the series close, and a tough Game 5 saw the Magic on the brink. With their backs against the wall, the team kept pushing, as Howard, Lewis, and Austin would keep their season alive to force a Game 7. And unlike all those other years where they couldn't seal the deal, this team said screw all that, and went into TD Garden and dropped 101 points on the Celtics, stunning the crowd and sending Orlando to the Eastern Conference Finals. However, their work would be far from over, as they would have to face the Cleveland Cavaliers next, including some guy, the league MVP, LeBron James. Man, this seems familiar. If the Magic wanted to get back to the finals, they needed to bring everything they got. And sure enough, the series was right down to the razor's edge right from the get-go, as Games 1 and 2 were both won by only 1 point, with Orlando pulling away first, and LeBron dunking it to win Game 2. As the series shifted back to Florida, the Magic would display their old home court dominance from years past, and win Game 3 in solid fashion. Then in Game 4, the teams would go back and forth, as extra time was eventually necessitated. With the basketball world watching, the Magic would outlast the onslaught as they would win again, pulling to 1 win away from the NBA Finals. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy, as despite mounting an incredible comeback in Game 5, they would come up short, as Cleveland would force a Game 6. But once again, this Magic team wouldn't falter, as Howard would put up 40 to cruise to a 103-90 win. The Magic are back, baby! And this team is looking legit. They were able to go toe-to-toe with Boston and Cleveland and shut down the league MVP. This team might have an even better shot of winning this than the 95 squad. If there is any time to take it home, it's now. I wonder who they're facing in the finals. If the shadow of LeBron wasn't daunting enough, the towering Goliaths that were the Los Angeles Lakers would put them to shame, led by none other than Kobe Bryant, who of course needs no introduction. Of course, the Magic would have to go against the titans of the league to earn their first championship. It seemed like the basketball gods themselves were testing them to see if they were truly worthy of entering the halls of immortality. After getting swept by Houston 14 years ago, did this team have the mettle to stand for themselves? Or would they be brushed aside yet again? Well, if anything, Game 1 was basically the gods smiting down their judgment, as Kobe would put up 40 points on the poor boys in blue, as they were obliterated 100-75. They would pick themselves back up for Game 2, however, and keep it close as the seconds waned. With the game tied at 88, Lee had the chance to seal the win, but the alley-oop would go wide, and the game would head into overtime, where the Lakers would pull away again to go up 2-0. After losing 6 straight finals games, it has to wear on them at least a bit now, right? But if there was any indication that that was the case, it would be put to bed, as Orlando would come out to play on their home court, and finally win their first finals game to make it 2-1. They played good in Game 4 as well, keeping it tight. Once again, as the game headed into the final moments, the Magic had another big chance to win. On that night, history would repeat itself as Howard would miss 2 free throws, and blown defense would lead to the game heading into overtime, where the Lakers would again prevail. The Magic were once again being humbled by the basketball world. It was cute how their team was able to get all the way back here, but their run had gone on long enough. And leave it to the basketball gods to end the matter in crushing fashion once again. The Orlando Magic, after coming all this way, would be swiftly defeated in the finals again, as Kobe and the Lakers would run all over them in Game 5. As the Larry O'Brien Trophy was lifted in Orlando, it should have been a momentous occasion, the home team finally coming through to bring their fans a long-awaited title. But instead, the Magic would not be walking out with gold, but silver. Orlando doesn't really have much when it comes to sports, the Magic being their only team in the Big Four. They were seen as second best to their rivals from Miami, who've won 3 titles. They were left out in favor of others time and time again, and twice now, they've gotten all the way up to the top, only to be sent hurtling back down. And this time, they still haven't recovered, as since 2009 they would only make the playoffs 6 times, including 5 first-round exits. Of course, the Celtics would get their revenge the next year, much like the Bulls of old, and once again they had to deal with their superstar walking out on them, as Howard would request a trade in 2012, leading to him being begrudgingly sent to the very team that beat them. They were never able to have it for themselves. They were always the stepping stone for other teams to climb over to reach glory. And yeah, a lot of teams can share the same sentiment, but for a city like Orlando, who has pretty much nothing else to cheer for except for college football and a soccer team, moments like these championship runs are cherished dearly. Again, much like the Rays, the Magic had their chances to become immortalized in the halls of basketball history, but they would come away empty-handed. Silver never tasted so bitter. And so, we can only look to the future, as the Magic continue to build to return to the finals. They have promising players, like their new first overall selection in Paolo Banchero, as well as Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Cole Anthony, and others. They were able to push Cleveland to a Game 7 before falling once again, but perhaps the future is bright in Orlando. Maybe one day they can finally get themselves the gold they've been seeking for 35 years now. But until then, they can cherish what they have, as like the silver on their shirts indicate, there's nothing wrong with being second best.
Loopy Doopy will never be bald. Oh my god, I was almost made it. I would have been the best.
You gotta get a dunk.
This is how a real man plays basketball. We're fine.